Okay, you guys know where I left off exactly. You said you were going to keep me on the straight and narrow here. Jesus was approaching Jerusalem, and you guys recall where we were? Come on.
How far back do you want to go? You were
No, I was talking about something on Thursday. Where were we? What was it? I said, remind me.
You were in Matthew 24.
Okay, what? 24. Matthew 24.
151, the little
Okay, the little apocalypse. Very good. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, I just came to something because I'm looking at this. I mean, you can go through every sentence and find these things. By the way, here we have the poor widow, Mark 12:41, preceding this, throwing her, casting her 2 mites into the temple, and so on and so forth. And later on, we're going to get Judas Iscariot casting his bribe money into the temple treasury, and so on. So we get variations on themes going all the time. But here's one that I think is particularly interesting, I think. And the John 12, which I have preceding these little apocalypses from John, maybe you know yours, 42. Nevertheless, even among the rulers, many believed on him. But because of the Pharisees, they did not confess it, lest they be put out of the synagogues. I mean, that is preposterous. I'm sorry to be cruel. That again shows the origin. Playing up to the ruling class. The Pharisees as a code name for the people observing the law within the church, the James party, according to Acts. Also implying, John knows that later on there was a ban on sex in the synagogue. That came in the 2nd century. It's called the Birkat Minim. That's a much later situation, and so on. All this belies a much later provenance, as we say. Now, you're going to get angry at me because and then we have, I am come as a light unto the world, and etc., 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 etc. All the Neoplatonic philosophy of light philosophy from Alexandria.
Was there sex in a synagogue?
Huh?
You said
sex, S-E-C-T-S. After all the trouble began in the 2nd century, there became yeah, I know you're jerking me there, but
good one.
Okay, look, I gotta move along here. So anyway, the little apocalypses: Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. It starts off with, "The last shall not left be one stone upon stone." Most scholars think that is written after the fall of the temple. I agree with them. Other than that, you have a pair of 40 years prior to the temple, this being predicted, possibly. But most think that that betokes and after fall of the temple provenance. You say, well, scholars are cynical. Yeah, well, we've already discussed that. I'm rushing along here because we don't have to go through the same things over and over again. Either you think scholars have some point, or the more critical scholars have a point there, or you think that this is the historical Jesus. And there's only no way to prove it either way, only your determination. You have to make the judgment call. Then we have him on the Mount of Olives, and he speaks of a sign again. And again, don't forget the miracle workers making signs in Josephus. He says they're more dangerous even than the brigands and the thugs and the revolutionaries. He says that often. Matthew 24:4. Now these whole sections are called the little apocalypses, when Jesus looks out at the temple and predicts the future. Leading astray, very big usage in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And someone came and led the many astray and removed the boundary markers, and so on and so forth. It's repeated over and over again in the Damascus document. leading many astray, even more to the point of the Damascus document. Many is the usage that is used in the Damascus document for the rank and file. You might have multitudes there, but you know, I think the Greek probably is more like many. But in any case, now we wouldn't have known this before we found the Dead Sea Scrolls. So you say, why didn't people in 1000 AD understand this? Well, because they didn't have things like the scrolls to work on. We're a fortunate generation. We have contemporary documents from the 1st century period, BC or AD, whatever you think they're from Palestine, as I've explained. Okay, now the end time, Daniel. That's a concept in Daniel. It's also very strong in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Kingdoms rising against kingdoms, famines, you shall be hated by all peoples for my name. Many will come and stumble, and then again, false prophets shall arise, many leading many astray. Again, reflecting language that we have from other sources, but perhaps this is what he said. That's up to you to determine. It looks a lot like the you know, early 1st centuries of Christianity there, with the idea that you know, many will come in my name and so on, false prophets, etc., 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 etc. But again, that's a matter of taste. This all comes down to, they will deliver you up to councils, and in synagogues you shall be beaten. That shows the picture of Paul in Acts, where he's supposedly being beaten in Asia Minor. I don't think many people were being beaten in synagogues. I never saw anyone beaten in a synagogue, but perhaps such a thing occurred. And you will stand before governors again. This sounds, you know, again, it's supposed to be predicted. So you'll have to judge this. It's called Little Apocalypse. And 15, when you see the abomination of the desolation, standing where it ought not to stand, and that, of course, even Matthew notes to you that that's from the prophet Daniel. And many think it's the referring to the Romans sacrificing to their standards on the Temple Mount. But it's also in the Maccabee books. It's the statue of the Olympian Zeus that the Seleucids set up in the temple at the time of the Maccabean uprising in 170 to 60 BC. Anyway, those who are in Judea should flee to the